right, guys, we're welcoming back Ryan Hammer to the spin cycle after a couple of years, or not years, couple of weeks, it seems like, before we had our first podcast that we did together. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on again.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate it for having me. It feels like a long time, you know. I don't
It
mind admitting
does.
that. So,
Yeah. Because I think, was it after or before the Final Four we talked?
I think it was after. My hunch says after.
Yeah. I'm surprised you're not
So,
wearing Yukon stuff instead of Villanova.
no, I'm not like I wear a lot of random teams and stuff like that. Like people always think I'm a Baylor fan or a Texas fan because I have those shirts on. But I just collect them through like certain like content work or just like having them going to some games and stuff like that. And Villanova is relatively local. And I've always been a big Jay Wright fan. So.
So, are you like a fan of like any certain college team? Like, do you have like a team that you
Yeah.
like root for constantly?
I am a Maryland fan. Like on paper, officially, I'm a
Okay.
Maryland fan. My older brother went there, so I was like growing up watching like Cruz Vasquez and all. But I find myself rooting for the same kind of programs every year. Like I said, Baylor, Tech, maybe not Texas has been through the ringer, but Nova, et cetera, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I think I knew that because you said something about Hunter Dickerson going to Maryland, and then what did he choose? Kansas.
yeah, we don't. That's not. We're not doing that on the topic list today.
Okay. Well, you may get Caleb Love. You never know. He decommitted from Michigan.
Pass respectfully. I
Respectfully, okay,
don't
we'll
want
just leave it
on
at
my
that.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, the I it was so weird because just to touch on college real quick. Um, Whenever he first got recruited to UNC, he was like, what was he like, top 10 prospect? Like
Yeah,
he,
he was.
yeah. And I remember I went to an IU game and I watched him play. That was whenever IU, I think they beat UNC pretty bad. It was like the very beginning of the year. UNC was ranked.
Mhm.
That was the actually was this past year that UNC didn't even make the tournament after they went all the way to the national championship game. And
Yeah.
I just was watching him and I was like, man, he plays completely different than from when he used to like a couple of years ago. It just seemed like something in his game changed. I don't know if it was like the coaching change from Roy Williams to the guy they have there now,
Yeah.
or if yeah something happened in his game or what. But yeah, I feel like a lot of colleges are like what you said, respectfully passing on him for whatever reason, and
Yeah,
I feel like
I'm not really sure.
yeah, you
It's
just well
I know
you never know.
Michigan was an academic thing. I know that where they have a very high standard of needing academic credits for athletes at any level,
Hmm.
um, which is very interesting. I understand, I get that, but it's weird that like that wasn't an issue in the process. They didn't like discover that until it was way too late. But who knows? I think my original prediction was Missouri, so we'll see if that stands now. He's from Missouri. He was heavily recruited at high school, but we'll see.
Yeah, I saw where it was Missouri and then Indiana was like the top
Yeah.
two colleges because I think Indiana was pretty close to getting
Mhm.
him before he committed to Michigan. I just don't know if IU is going to want him because we have Xavier Johnson coming back after he got injured. Plus, we have
Yeah.
a couple other guards like Trey Galloway, Gabe Cups, a couple other guys I think that we recruited or are coming back. So I just don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. If I had to put money on it, I would probably put that he'd probably go to Missouri because I feel like everybody wants a homecoming once in their life.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
So stepping away from college, have you been watching any of the NBA games on here recently?
Of course. Especially as like the playoffs get dwindled down to four teams, or even like when it was the conference semis, it's much easier to watch them. I feel like because they're not like two on every single day, every night, and like late night.
Yeah.
And now it's like one on every day, and sometimes they're not even on at all. I think this is perfect. I'm like, oh, great. Every other day there's a game, or every couple, whatever it is, and it's very easy to watch. Normal times, no 10:30 start, not yet at least, so that's good.
Dude, that absolutely kills me whenever it's like a 10 or 10:30 start because sometimes I like to record my reaction to the game like right after the game's over, but it'll be
Like
like
2 a.m.
12:30. Yeah, at like 12:30 or like 2 a.m. I'll be sitting in my room back here. My wife is like texting me. She's like, "Hey, can you please keep it down?" And I want to sound like I'm talking. I don't want to like whisper into my microphone. It's not like an ASMR
Right,
channel or
exactly.
anything. So, yeah, it's just I'm really happy that the games are starting like at 8:30 because that's like a good time because you're finally relaxed sitting down and you can finally just watch the game. and then you could
Yeah.
even have enough time to maybe do something too.
Yeah.
Um, I'm super impressed, and I already knew the Nuggets were going to be like one of those teams in the NBA that were probably going to be a problem at the postseason.
Mm.
But that first Lakers Nuggets game, I just could not believe how good Jokic is. And I know there was a lot of controversy during the season about how he shouldn't be like the MVP once again, because then if you make him MVP, you're going to make him MVP over like Tim Duncan, who never won it 3 times in a row, LeBron James, who never won it 3 times in a row. Like, is it not crazy what we're witnessing right now? Like, I feel like we're witnessing a piece of history, like right before our eyes in Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, and I think it's the MVP award, like any award, is narrative based, but MVP more than anything. And that's the problem because like you shouldn't people that voters literally came out and said like, oh, like if I vote for Jokic and he wins, that's like you said, we have to rank him in the top 5 all time, top 6 all time. And I'm like, you can't think like that. Like, stop thinking about what the guy 30 years ago did relative to what Jokic is doing now. Like, did he deserve the MVP? And he did because like if people are saying, "Oh, Embiid's out, Jokic is showing him up in the playoffs," like that has nothing to do with the award. What he did in the regular season the last couple of years, he replicated this year, but the team got better and ended up being a 1 seed. So, in what world does he not win MVP if he won it the 2 years before? That was kind of my issue with that. But you're right, like we're seeing some record-breaking like efficiencies and also just like production overall. And in this playoff run, the way he's playing now, he's averaging, well, I don't know, like 30, 12, and 12 or some stupid stat line like that. If they go to the finals and win, he 100% has to be ranked in that, like he has 3 or 4 MVPs with a finals title and a finals MVP, like in that top 10 of all time, because like that's what he's doing. Like it's hard. People don't want to admit it because he's an international guy and he's not as like athletically gifted like a lot of the other all-time greats that we've seen, like LeBron and Jordan, Kobe, etc. But like it doesn't matter because the impact he's having on the game and his team and winning is next to no one. It's completely one of a kind. So
And my argument with some of my friends that I've had with is, Larry Bird is the last player to win 3 MVPs in a row in the regular season. Do we consider him like better than LeBron James? So like just because you won 3 MVPs doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be better than the guys who never won
right,
3 MVPs before. Um, and I almost feel like the MVP award is more becoming a regular season and the very first part of the postseason
mm-hmm.
because, and I know the voting's probably done before that, but then everybody online, like you see it, they're like, oh, well, like Joel Embiid is doing things in the playoffs more than Nikola Jokic is, or like last year, like Nikola Jokic won it, but his team got eliminated in the first round, and they were saying he shouldn't have won it. It's like, well, we have to kind of make a decision. Is this going to be a regular season award? Is it going to be a regular season and like first part of the postseason award? Um, I almost feel like they should make they already have the Western Conference MVP and the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I feel like there should be some sort of award or accolade that you get like the MVP of the playoffs.
Yeah,
And I mean, because we've had tons of people over the years, like Jalen Brunson, for example, on the Knicks. He was
mm-hmm.
playing a phenomenal game for the Knicks, and he would probably be in the running for that accolade that I'm mentioning. Even Steph Curry, what he was doing on the Warriors. So you have all these players that are playing the top of their game. It's the playoffs. I mean, that's why they're there. That's why they're paid to do that. It just kind of bugs me that we're not calling it as it is. If it looks like a duck
Yeah,
and sounds like a duck, it's probably a duck. Um, and Nikola Jokic, rightfully so, should probably have got that third MVP. And by the way, Joel Embiid played in the playoffs and what he was saying after the game about how him and James Harden can't carry the team. I'm like, dude, you're the MVP. You're literally supposed to carry this team on your back.
yeah.
That's why they voted you for that award.
Yeah, and they also have like Maxi, and he's had some help, and him and Harden have not been consistent enough to be able to say that. Like everyone was against him. I agree with you that they should kind of look at it like March Madness and college basketball do, where they have in the tournament, they'll do a region teams and MVP. So they should do like an all playoff first team and second team and an MVP. It doesn't have to be the winner. It doesn't have to be the Jokic if the Nuggets win. It doesn't have to be LeBron if the Lakers win the title. Like it could be Jokic if they lose in the conference finals or the finals. Like you take it all into consideration. I also think that they should announce the NBA regular season awards while the playoffs, the first week of the playoffs. Like they should do the voting literally 2 days after the season ends, a day after the season ends, get it done in those few days and announce it within a week and not stretch it out because it makes it look even worse over time. And like you said, where it's either commit to it being a regular season award and announce it during the very beginning of the playoffs or incorporate the playoffs because whether the voters have ability to use that or not, everyone in the public, which is who will be arguing it for years and years to come, like how they see it. That's their perspective on things. So I think they should really put it like I think they announced it during the middle of the second round, right?
Yeah.
So like, and at that point, it's like, oh, like Embiid's playing really well, and I think they were up 3-2 at the time. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Embiid definitely MVP. Once they lost Game 6 and definitely Game 7, everyone's like, oh yeah, how is he the MVP? I'm like, well, that's not the award, but the NBA made it look like it is. So
And the other thing about like them announcing it in like the second round, it kind of takes it away from what they're doing in the playoffs because everybody's anticipating the MVP award coming out. I like it like in 2K the game, like as soon as the season ends, you know who won
yeah,
all the awards.
yeah,
And like I don't want to wait around the whole playoffs to know who got the sixth man, or who got the MVP, or who got
yeah.
most improved. I want to know that as soon as the season ends because that's a regular season award.
And they do it like day by day. Like one day they'll do six man of the year, the next day they'll do most improved, the next week they'll do MVP. Like the NFL does a whole award show. Like just do an award ceremony. Just no games
Yeah.
on for one night. Do an award ceremony. Everyone shows up that can show up. They give the awards out, and that's that. Like it's so drawn out. And I love TNT, the TNT show, the crew they have. But like I think they'll attest to like it just gets so drawn out, and they're just like, can we just do it all at once? So
Yeah. Well, so if you had to pick two teams to go to the NBA finals, who would you
yeah.
pick and why?
So my pick before the series were the Nuggets Celtics. I'll stick with Nuggets Celtics, even though the Heat won their first game, which was I love. I mean, it'd be cool to see the Heat go to the finals, the 8 seed and out of the play in and all. The Nuggets are such a complete team. The way they built this team is one so easy to root for, but two so successful. Jokic is as high and elite of a star and go-to guy as you need. And you might not think, oh, he's not gonna give you 40 when you need it or like hit the game winning bucket. Like, well, he will. He definitely will. He'll give you 40 any night. Jamal Murray is a different animal in the playoffs. I'll admit that he's not a superstar, but he in the playoffs he plays like he should be a Hall of Famer. So it's good to have a scorer like that, especially in the backcourt with Jokic. Then the role players are so elite at a high level, every single one, and it's different every night. Who's impacting? Christian Brown hasn't been crazy in the last couple games, but the first games versus the Suns he was. Bruce Brown has been unbelievable. Aaron Gordon's been hot and cold, but when one is hot, the other is cold. It kind of balances out. And KCP, like it goes down the line. So they've done a really good job building this team. I think the Lakers have done a similar job, to be fair, like LeBron, AD, and their role players that Rob Pelinka put together at the trade deadline have been unbelievable with Austin Reeves kind of stepping up more and more throughout the end of the year in the playoffs. So I hope the series goes 7. I think it will because they're like I said very similarly built teams. But I like the Nuggets and I like whoever wins the West to win the finals because the Celtics have been way too inconsistent. They have a similar again very similar 2 stars, a lot of really good role players. But like I said, their inconsistency and the inability to yes, the Heat have been playing well and maybe we're counting them out a little too much. But they're an 8 seed for a reason. They lost to the Hawks in the play-in for a reason. They don't have Tyler Hero. And I think the Celtics should be able to handle business, but they're not. So there's inconsistencies do scare me. So I'll take the Nuggets to win the finals.
That's what I usually go with. Anytime someone asks me, like when I post my videos on TikTok or your YouTube shorts, um, like I picked the Heat to win last night,
Yeah.
and some guy was saying like, I don't know why everyone's picking the Heat. Like they had their run, now it's over. I'm like, dude, the Celtics I think are like below 500 at home now, or no, they're like they're even at home and away in the playoffs. So like every first game, I feel like the Celtics usually blow it because they go into that game as the heavy favorite. I think like the Celtics had like a 85% chance to win this game that they played against the Heat. Um, the Heat are just one of those teams that will knock you in the mouth as soon as they play you the first game. And I totally agree with you saying that the Celtics have been really inconsistent. I mean, Jason Tatum, if it wasn't for him hitting like two or three threes in the final like minutes of the Sixers game, we'd be watching a Sixers Heat game right now. And we'd be thinking to ourselves,
True.
what's going to happen to the Tatum Brown duo? That's
Yeah.
something I wanted to ask you. let's say the Celtics and the Nuggets go to the finals. Let's say it goes 7 games. The Nuggets win by, a close game. Where did the Celtics go on from here when they've had this core of like Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and Jaylen Brown? Do you see that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum may go their separate ways? One of them stays on the Celtics because both of them are eligible for a supermax contract because they both made an All NBA team this year.
Yeah. I mean, they should both get the extension. It's going to be tough to build a team like they have when you have two supermax guys like that, especially under the CBA and everything. But there's if they go to the finals, there's no way they can be like, oh yeah, we got to break this team up. We didn't win the title. Like no, 2 years in a row, you're there. You are there, and you're not. There's no line to get over. Like yes, I guess winning a title is the line, but like it's not like you couldn't win 2 years in a row. Like you are there. You just have to get the job done when you're there in game 6 and 7 or whatever it is. Win your home games, like you were saying. I I don't think that they can break them up. I think you just try to break up, figure out how to build around them. If one of them says, if likely it'd be Jaylen Brown, I'd imagine, over Tatum, because like Jason Tatum had like 1 or 2 bad games, and people are like, been telling you Jaylen Brown's been that dude. He's been the guy for them. Like, no, Jason Tatum is their best player by a landslide, by a country mile. But like if Jaylen Brown was like, oh, like, you know what? I gotta try to do this somewhere else. It's not working. We can't win a title, even though we've been to the finals twice in a row. Then you figure it out. Like you go trade him to try to get the biggest package possible to get a second guy or build with a bunch of really good role players, like we were talking about the Nuggets, and like they have done to build around Jason Tatum alone. But I don't think that either of them will want to leave unless they lose this series to the Heat in really bad fashion. But well, I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller, so
I would like to assume that they'll stay together. After the Sixers game, when they beat the Sixers, they both like went up to each other and were hugging each other and laughing and stuff. I think they genuinely like each other, like brothers.
yeah.
I mean, they've been together since they've
Oh
been
yeah.
drafted. It The only reason I ask that is because if you go back to the history of the NBA, you'll see a lot of teams that reached the finals but never were able to get over that hump of
Right.
getting a championship. The most famous one to me, John Stockton, Karl Malone, going in back-to-back finals. They faced Michael Jordan both those years. Obviously, they lost because of Michael Jordan, but
Right.
I kind of feel like last year the Celtics were kind of set up to win a finals. Obviously, the Warriors came up, and did what the Warriors usually do. This year we have the Nuggets in the way. I'm not a Celtics fan, but I'm not. I don't feel sorry for Celtics fan because they're going through this because I'm a Bulls fan. I would love for my team to be in the finals right now. I would consider that a win. Um,
Yeah.
I think that if you're going, like you said, going to the finals, you're doing something right. You're just maybe one or two pieces away from getting a championship, or you have all the pieces. Maybe your first year head coach isn't just pulling his weight. I think that's another thing people aren't really talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like if the Celtics had a coach that had been there for 2 or 3 years, then maybe they'd be in a different position. Maybe if Brad Stevens was still there, we'd be talking about them different.
Sure.
But when you have to go from Brad Stevens to Ime Udoka and then going to Joe Mazzulla within 3 years, it's kind of like, what do you expect them to do? I mean, they're kind of playing by the seam of their pants. A lot of people are saying that Al Horford and Marcus Smart are the ones talking during the huddles and the timeouts and stuff, that Joe Mazzulla is basically letting them do whatever they want. Um, and I feel like Joe Mazzulla should get criticized a little bit too, just because of his end of the game strategies with the Celtics, especially in the Sixers series when he would like
Yeah.
have 2 timeouts in his pocket and he wouldn't use them. I kind of feel like it's an unwritten rule in basketball. Like if a team goes on like a 7-0 run or 8-0 run, you should pretty much call a timeout to stop that momentum.
Yeah.
But I think that's just a rookie head coach. I mean, I remember when I first started my job, I didn't know what to do. And then I always looked towards my dad, who's my boss. If something happened, I'd look towards him and be like, hey, what do I do? And then he would guide me. Joe Mazzulla is kind of left out in no man's land. Like if something goes
Yeah.
wrong, all the blame gets put back on him.
Yeah, maybe if Ime is that whole situation doesn't happen with them and how that broke down, maybe they're coasting to the finals right now. Like I don't doubt that at all. Yeah.
So, one last question before we get into the NBA lottery stuff. Let's just say LeBron goes to the NBA finals. And let's say he wins championship against whoever, Celtics or Heat. Do you still think people will say that there's no way that he'll ever be better than Michael Jordan. And I'm not trying to get into like an all time like
No, yeah.
greats debate with you. I just feel like every time LeBron does something, everyone tries to diminish it somehow.
Yeah, people who don't like LeBron or LeBron haters, he'll never whatever like he has to do this. It's always something new. It's always gonna be something new. And they oh, he didn't have as many rings as Jordan at this point. Like even though he did it, whatever, three different teams, so many times against so many different teams, whatever it is. People who don't think LeBron is the best player ever are never gonna think that. If they don't think it now, it's never gonna happen. One more title won't do anything unless he won like a league MVP at age whatever 38, 39 next year, which would be unbelievable, which would be ridiculous. Um, they just it's just never gonna happen, and that's fine. Like you just kind of if you like I think LeBron is the best player of all time. I understand I am biased towards when I grew up and how I watched him, but it's not worth a conversation with my dad. It's not worth a conversation with my older brother that like don't even like watch enough or listen. They don't they want to listen at all. Um, and like you said, it's always they're gonna find a new excuse, whether it's gonna be the amount of rings or the way they want certain things. Or people will say that the way he went like my dad's generation, I guess the boomers, they'll just say like the way he went about things, the decision and going changing all these teams and super teams, it's so ridiculous. That's why he can never like that makes no sense. That makes literally no sense. But it's always going to be something new or something ridiculous like that if you don't think it now. So does it one more time? There are people who out there say like if LeBron wins this year, he is the best player of all time, and no one can argue it, which is fine. And then people will still argue it, of course. And I
Yeah.
still think it's a debate. Like it's a debate. I get that. Um, but I don't think no one's going to change their mind. I don't think not a single person if he wins a title or not, which is pretty crazy because he's at this age, if he's winning a title, being probably the best. If they win, he probably has to be the best player for them to get over that line. But that'd be pretty damn impressive. So
I I recently found out how aggressive and ruthless the internet is. You've been creating content for a while, so I'm sure you know. Um, but like the other day, I posted a where should Jalen Green get traded to because there was rumors about him being on like the market for whoever. Like the Rockets were like, hey, if you want to trade us Jalen Green, or if you we will trade Jalen Green for another superstar, like our doors are open. And I posted like three videos or a video of three different trade ideas, which I genuinely thought I was like, this could work out. And I said in my video, like, obviously there's gonna have to be some picks or cash consideration in these because the salaries don't exactly match up.
Mhm.
And I was like, at the time I posted that, I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna make a LeBron Michael Jordan video. Like, if LeBron wins this, goes in the playoffs and goes far, do you think that will be more of a status thing for him to reach Michael Jordan? And then I made the video and I had it in my drafts because I was going to save it. And then after I posted that Jalen Green trade video, I looked through the comments and people were just like, literally, they said like, this guy obviously has no idea what he's talking about. These are some of the worst trade ideas I've ever heard of. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, should I respond to him? And I was like, I'm just gonna say, hey. So I responded to a couple. I was like, hey, I kind of thought these were good. What are your ideas? And I just nothing. So I
Yes.
I I think I didn't post that LeBron MJ video because I didn't want people coming back. But at the same time, that Jalen Green video I had is like 2.2 thousand views on YouTube Shorts. So it's like those videos do well. It's for the
Yeah.
wrong reasons. People get on there and they roast you. So
Yeah, but you gotta think always remember that for people are ruthless. Like you said, you ask for what do you think, and they're just and crickets. Like
mhm.
I've been getting them forever, and I still get them. I actually like encourage them because gives me an opportunity to like even go further on on my opinion on things and like try just whatever I know, depending on what the topic is. But for every person that brings hate or whatever it is, like a disagreement, there's probably two, three, five, 10 people that agree and like it and watch it and are cool and are silent, like silent viewers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because usually comments are people that are very strongly opinionated, polarizing one end or the other. And there's not people that are just like, this is solid. It's like, no, like I 100% agree or like you suck. So it's like, well,
Yeah, there's no middle. It's either this is a
yeah,
great video or this video absolutely sucks balls. Yeah.
yeah, just let them do whatever they want. And like you said, it got you to that 2,200 views, and it's gonna push to other people, and people that like it are gonna be like, oh, you know what, that guy's wrong. Like this video is good, and then so I
Yeah.
wouldn't worry about them too much. And those the people are stupid. So
Well, I'm just waiting for one of those trades to actually work because then I'm gonna go back on there and say, "Hey guys, I tried to tell you in the beginning." So, but
yeah,
yeah, I like getting those because like last night I posted a TikTok saying the Heat would win because I genuinely thought they would because the Celtics don't play well at home. And some guy got on there and was like, you know, I'm so tired, like I said in the beginning of everyone always assuming the Heat's gonna win. And I was gonna get back on there and say like, hey, the Heat won, but I was like, you know what? I'm not that guy. You're not that guy,
yeah,
pal. So I'm just not gonna even just do it. I'll just post another
yeah,
video and he can watch it and maybe follow me.
yeah, exactly.
So the real reason I wanted to have you on, Ryan, is obviously I like talking to you about ball and stuff, but you are like probably one of the top people on the social media apps right now, the internet, that know a lot about these guys coming into the NBA lottery because you're a huge college basketball guy. That's how I found you. I know your stuff when it comes to these prospects that are going into the draft, especially the lottery. And I want to talk to you about some of these things. So, first off, we know that this was the Victor Wembanyama draft. So, whoever got the number one overall pick, they're going to draft Wemby. I want to ask you, is there even a 0.1 chance that Wemby does not go number one overall?
No, it's like you can never put zeros or hundreds on anything. It's much less than point one or whatever, point zero zero, like go down to whatever it is. He's going number one 100%. Like it's this 100% you can ever think. When Trevor Lawrence went number one in the NFL draft, when Joe Burrow went number one, I remember the odds on those things. Like when Cade Cunningham went number one, it was these things were always going to happen. Like these things are always going to happen, but it to the times 10 times 100. Um, Again, this is a really good, like you said, the Victor Wembanyama draft. I think it's also the Scoot Henderson draft. It's also the Thompson twins and Keontae George, Anthony Black, etc. Like the draft is incredibly deep at the top, at the very top of like lottery and like first round. I think there's a ton of high level guys you can get impact from right away. But because the class is so good and Victor is still that far ahead of everybody, it makes it even better. But it's a 0% chance he doesn't go number one for sure.
I think it's funny because I don't know if it was like before we knew who was exactly was going to go into the draft, but some people were saying this wasn't a very good draft. Like, you know how you have some of those years, like the 2002 draft, I think like
Yeah.
that was when like Jamal Crawford went in the top five. That draft notoriously is one of the worst drafts in NBA history. Um, but this draft, when I looked at your mock draft that you posted, and like you said, the lottery, all those guys I know, and if I don't know them, then I don't really consider it like
All right.
uh, a decent draft because I watch college basketball a lot and I try to keep up with the players who I think is going to go to the lottery and stuff. But 1 through 14, if you're in the lottery, you're probably going to get at least a good guy. And obviously, later in the draft, you never know, a team may snag one of those players that out of nowhere just become really good. Um, I don't know if that's how this draft is going to be, but I always feel like that.
Yeah.
So explain to me, and I have a question for you right after this. Explain to me, like, I don't know anything about Wimby and why is he so special?
He just like I'm trying to phrase this the right way, I guess. He impacts every single aspect of the game as a handler, as a big, you can put him on the wing. That is one thing, versatility that has become so popular in the current NBA, where you think of tons of different guys. Anthony Black's another prospect who plays three positions, right? You think of guys that do so many things in the floor that can handle, that can, like I said, do so many things and impact the game all over at 7'4", 7'5" in shoes, whatever he is. I'm like kind of speechless right now. Like I'm not really sure how to explain it.
Yeah.
He's just like this alien. Like he is like Slender Man, the way he's built and the fact that he doesn't have any, as is right now, like medical concerns or like issues with his movement and mobility. Like he legitimately moves like a guard, and like that's what KD is so popular for. And like he moves like KD does, but add almost a foot to half a foot to his height of KD. It's like it makes no sense. Um, I mean, you think about a 10-foot basket and like how big the floor is and how big most of the players are in the league. Like that is literally unfair. Like he won the French league. He won best scorer, best shot blocker, best defender, MVP, best young player, best player. Like he won everything, everything possible. He won, and that's a good league. Like the Euro leagues are all very, very strong. People don't realize that. Like that's why Luka didn't go number 1 when he should have because he won the Euro League MVP. But like those leagues are strong, and to be 19 years old and win every single award possible is actually crazy. So I would just show them that. I think if I would show you that if you knew nothing, but in his league he won everything, and Luka Doncic came from a similar league. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
So
So, do you agree with people saying that he is like the greatest prospect to ever, you know, come in the draft, like even better than a prospect than like LeBron James?
I think physically speaking, he's definitely better than LeBron was. Like, listen, I was super young, so I wasn't like doing draft content and scouting when I
Mm-hmm.
was whatever years old. Um, but physically speaking, he's definitely a better prospect than LeBron, especially fitting this NBA and like he's literally perfect for it. It's tough though because like the consensus, the public perspective of it and perception of it is tough because LeBron was American high school kid being hyped up since he was early, right into high school early, skipping high school the whole nine. He didn't have social media to be fair, but Victor being in France is, I think, a blessing for him because we've seen Amani Bates and Mikey Williams and those guys. Obviously, they're very different. And like Amani is maybe a comparable, but if Victor Wembanyama was American and going through the high school and maybe even college or G League Ignite system, there would be much more eyeballs on him. We know a lot more about him, and maybe his life is different. Maybe if other things influence his life, like we've seen some of these other guys that I mentioned, um, and he'd be more scrutinized than he is. Until he gets in the league, he will be. But I just think the public perception of it changes with those things, like the lack of social media, but being American and being in France, but social media still helps us know him. But most NBA fans, like 80%, didn't know who he was until the last like 4 or 5 months, to be honest. A lot of people that like us, like we knew who he was. Like I've been watching him for like 3 or 4 years, I feel like at this
Mm-hmm.
point. But I just think I'll say yes, physically he's the best prospect ever because like people were mad that Woj called him the best prospect in team sports history. I was trying to think how he isn't. I'm like, who have I seen that's like that generational? Trevor Lawrence, when he was like 16, I remember coming through the ranks of like coming to Clemson and going through Clemson and stuff like that. I was like, he was someone that I compared to, but I'm like, this is not like that. This is next
Mm-hmm.
level. So
So, is it just because like is it just because he's so tall, he's so versatile? Like if you played him at the 3, 4, or 5, he could fit in that position, perfectly. I understand why there's a big hype about him, and I'm not saying I'm a hater of him because I'm not. Because I hope he goes out there and does like the best.
yep.
Um, there's just a small part of me that kind of gets worried about these like unicorns because I remember whenever Kristaps Porzingis, he obviously didn't go number 1, but when he went, I think it was number 4 to the Knicks. He was supposed to be this generational guy because he can move, he could shoot threes. Obviously, he couldn't move like Wemby, but a small part of me almost gets worried for these unicorn guys because they
Yeah.
have all this pressure on them. Like if Wemby doesn't go to the Spurs next year and average like 18 and 10, I feel like people are going to like say he's a bust. Let's say the Spurs aren't a playoff team next year. People are still going to say, I thought he was supposed to be
Right.
generational talent. You know, like LeBron going to the Cavs his first year, they didn't go to the playoffs. Now, I think they doubled their win total, but
Mm.
I, I don't know. Is it silly of me to be that guy that's like, I don't know, like there something may happen, or is it just completely like Connor, you're silly. This guy is going to change the franchise.
No, I think he is. I'm not gonna say it's silly to say that, but I'm confident he will. The expectations and standards are so high for him right now that it's almost unfair to him, right? Like if, like you said, if he doesn't win MVP in his first like 5 years, it's like, oh, well, like I thought he was supposed to be like LeBron, and like LeBron did this and go to the finals and stuff like that. But the league is different, everything is different. I will say the influx of these unicorns not succeeding for the most part, like Kristaps is still good to be fair, but like that, Bol, whatever, like he was a second round pick to be fair, but whatever.
Yeah.
Chet not playing last year, I think definitely hurt people's like the people that are like, oh yeah, they're gonna break in half or went crazy when Chet Holmgren got hurt, which is literally terrible to do. But they're completely different players, and everyone gets hurt. Like Blake Griffin missed his entire rookie year. Like Ben Simmons missed his entire rookie year. Take out the last 2 years of Ben Simmons, and he was a very, very, very good player. So I think like even if when he gets if he like is out for 2 weeks with injury, people are gonna be like, "Oh, here we go." I'm like, "No, dude, like people get hurt. Like that's what happens."
Yeah.
But the standards aren't fair for him right now. If he's not an all-star by his second year, and like you said, the Spurs aren't a playoff team and contending for titles in 3 or 4 years, and he's not winning MVPs right away, he's a bust, which is unfair. I think if he's an all-star within a few years, like that's a fair standard. Hey, like let's give him 4 years to get him 3, 4 years, get to an all-star game, or be first team all defense or something like that. And that might happen in year one, to be completely honest. Like maybe it's like the 2K player in me, like you were talking before, because I play with him in 2K in my Spurs rebuild.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I just don't see I don't see a world where he isn't good unless something crazy happens, like wild injuries. But we haven't seen wild injuries in his recent history, so that's why I'm not worried.
I feel better about it because I've been following a lot of your content about like where he should go and stuff. And I know you said on one of your videos that the best place for him to land would be the Spurs. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So I have faith in the Spurs that they'll develop him into a player because the Spurs notoriously are one of the best franchises to develop a young star. Obviously, David Robinson, Tim Duncan. They took Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, all those guys, Boris Diaw, um, all those guys. And they made those players into championship teams. I mean, heck, they even was it Kawhi Leonard was like the 14th pick
yeah,
when the Spurs traded him for George Hill to
yeah.
get Kawhi, and they made him into a Finals MVP when Tim Duncan was still on the team, which is
Right.
crazy. So I feel better about it, but is there any other team in the NBA? And I'm not talking about just the lottery. Is there any other team in the NBA that you think would do a better job at making Wemby the best player possible than the Spurs?
Better job, no. Close to as good of a job. Like you can argue a few teams. I actually would have liked to see the Jazz with their their very, very
Oh
impressive front
yeah,
office and their team. They would have been really good right away too. I will say that LeBron, when he came in, went to one of the worst franchises you can imagine. Like the Cavs were down very bad, but he still got very sorry teams to the finals and into the playoffs, making deep runs and winning MVPs and doing everything he needed to. So I think wherever he was going to go, he would have been fine because he's that caliber of a player. Like we talk about, if LeBron went anywhere, he would have been fine. Maybe not the same exact player to a T, especially being from Ohio. That's kind of like an unfair part of it. But I think he'd be fine no matter where he went. But the Spurs couldn't be better. Again, raising the standards even more because like it's a perfect situation for him, but it couldn't be better. Yeah.
I love how the Spurs got him because when I was thinking about it, I was watching it, and me and my friends had a group message going back and forth. And as soon as I got to the top four, I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to go to the Trailblazers. I was like, just I'm calling it right now because I was just like, that's going to save the franchise. Him and Dame, they're going to go to a finals. Wemby's first year, blah blah blah. And then when the Trailblazers got picked, I was like, oh my god, I think he may go to the Hornets. Him and Lamelo, and like for some reason, it didn't register in my mind that the Spurs were in the top four because it was like it was right on the tip of our nose. It was always going to be the Spurs because the Spurs were like the best place possible for him, especially since he's like an international player from France. I think Wemby said on ESPN after the draft, like everybody in France was literally begging him to get drafted by the Spurs because like the Spurs are like a France NBA team almost from Tony
Yeah.
Parker and Boris Diaw, even Manu Ginobili being from I think he was from one of the South America teams.
Mhm.
But I just love that the Spurs are getting him. I hope Popovich makes him into a great player, and I hope the Spurs are back on top because I just feel like the NBA is a little bit better whenever the teams I grew up watching are good. Like the Spurs were good
Yeah.
whenever I was growing up. Obviously the Heat were good because LeBron was on there. Um, the Bulls were good. Um, the Hawks were decent. I remember whenever the Hawks had that. What was it like? Four players that were all stars that year. Was it like
Yeah.
Paul Millsap, uh,
It was
Jeff
an interesting
Teague,
group.
yeah, Kyle Korver, all them guys. So yeah, I'm really happy for Spurs fans, and I mean they literally hit the lottery, so it's awesome for them.
Yeah.
Moving on to the second pick, Scoot Henderson is like the unanimous like second pick from what I've read. Um, is there any possibility that the Hornets don't take Scoot Henderson and maybe take Brandon Miller?
There's a lot of people saying like Miller's the better fit, and the Hornets GM is like, our team is pretty good, so we could. First of all, their team is not good. Their team is very bad. but they're like, oh, we could draft for fit a little bit because like we're building this young core. No, every team in the league has two players. Every good team in the league has two players. We talk about Jamal Murray and Jokic, and talk about Tatum and Brown and AD and LeBron. You like, there's no Scoot Henderson should be the unanimous number two. He should be going number two without even a blink of an eye, and the draft should start really at three or maybe even four if they're so set on taking Brandon Miller at three. People are going to do it. I think one, you'll see some smokescreen reports. Two, you'll see ESPN and outlets just trying to get like clickbait and engagement. Be like, no, you know what? It's not just to create more hype around the draft. Because if the
Yeah.
one and two are locked up, and then in turn the three is locked up, that's boring. So they get less engagement and people care about the draft less. So I do think there's an aspect of that where people are like ESPN has been one of the main ones saying, oh, Miller might go three. I think Miller could go three. That like anyone who believes that is, I think, a bad is has a I don't want to say bad, has some kind of mistakes or mishaps in their evaluation of Miller and Scoot. I think Scoot's closer to. I'm not saying he's closer to one than closer to three, but he's not close to three in terms of caliber and rank in the class, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I just don't. They could go Brandon Miller because the Hornets have a way of doing some dumb things in the last few years, and I think MJ's been a terrible owner, to be completely honest. I also don't think that they're a very good team, and they think they're good, whatever. So I hope that Scoot goes to three. But the Blazers are similarly not great either, and they haven't done good building around Dame. But Scoot is the second best player in the class. He should go number two. Will he go number two? I'm not fully confident, but he definitely should.
Well, I completely agree with you in you saying that he's closer to one than he's three. Because if you take Wemby out of this draft, I feel like Scoot Henderson would be going number one overall.
Oh yeah.
And he's been that he's been that player who's been supposed to go high in the draft. I think ever since he kind of went to the G League, because that's why he went to the G League to
Mm.
obviously get paid and build his brand and stuff. Um, I just have not a bad feeling about Brandon Miller, but that's something I wanted to ask. Is like we saw it with Jalen Carter in the NFL,
Mm.
and he did some off the field stuff that got him put down all the way to like ninth when he was supposed to go number one. Do you think that off the court stuff for Brandon Miller is going to affect his draft stock any?
It already would have, and I don't think it has at all. I know for a fact, talking to people, that he's gone out of his way to take meetings with every single team that wants to meet with him, even teams that like I think he met with the Knicks, something like that, teams that don't have draft picks, like or only second rounders. Like he's meeting with them. I think because he wants to be as transparent as possible with this process, and he has good people around him now. I'll say that, like professional people at least. Um, the short answer is no. I think he's fine. He's doing a good job of it from what I know. I'm not in the meetings and interviews with him and team interviews, of course, but he's going to be open about it and tell everything that he knows and can about it. He legally didn't get into any trouble. He was always kept out of it. They investigated him. He was fine. So I think everything's fine. He's very well spoken too. He's like a high energy guy. He's pretty outgoing from what I can tell, and everything that I know. I don't, like I said, I'm not best friends with him, but um I don't think it's going to affect him at all at this point. It would have already done it. So,
Do you think that Brendan Miller going three? I know he's in your mock draft at three. Do you
mm.
think he is the legitimate best fit for that Blazers team?
Yeah, I think that they trade the pick, they're dumb because if it's Scoot or Brandon Miller, or even if they wanted to go Ben Thompson, whatever, I think all these guys offer enough. They want to win with Dame. I get they want to do that. They've been saying that for a decade. They have never shown that they would come close to a title. The one time they got to the conference finals, they got swept by the Warriors. They have done such a bad job that it's too late for the Dame core and Nurkic and whatever. Like it's way too late. So going all in and trading three to get Siakam or OG is gonna get you nowhere. They are never gonna win a title, this team with Dame. I hate to say that because I love Dame. I like his loyalty, whatever, but it's never gonna happen. And trading three is dumb because that player will impact you right away and have that long-term point of view where you're gonna give that up if you trade for Siakam or whatever it's gonna be. Um, which is the rumor. That's why I bring that up. I think Miller offers a lot of what they need also in terms of exact fit with Dame and Simons. Like they have a decent team, but if I'm still thinking about them trading three, they're going to be so stupid if they do that. They're going to regret that in 6 months.
Let me give you a couple of choices here about the Blazers. So
Okay.
If you were the Blazers, would you draft Brandon Miller and keep Damian Lillard, or would you draft Brandon Miller and then think about trading Damian Lillard and trying to build around Andrew Simmons, Shannon Sharp, and Brandon Miller?
I think most people will say, "Oh, if you're not trading the pick, just trade Dame also and go full rebuild." It's not that simple, like 2K, where you know what, I'm just going to sell everybody or like do. You can't just do that. It's not that simple, especially a guy who's been there for his whole career and like he is one of the best players, if not the best in franchise history. Um, I wouldn't trade him. I would take Brandon Miller and say, we're going to try to win. And hey, Dame, like he offers enough for us right now to keep winning, to get better and better every single day and try to win this year. But if Dame says, guys, like if you guys keep the pick, you got to send me off, then I'm shipping him out at that point because in 2 years, you're not going to be able to get what you're going to get for him now, also on a trade package, whether disregarding what kind of contract he could be on or is on. Um, his value is declining. It's not inclining, it is declining. And teams that need him, whether that's going to be, I don't know, Philly or one of the LA teams, whatever it's going to be, or the Bucks, like they will pay up now much different than they will in 2 years when it's way too late for you. When you're like, oh, well, Dame wants to go play somewhere else for 2 years before he retires, try to win. So I think if he asks for a trade, by all means, you can be out the door and we'll get a really good package. We'll find you a new home. But I'm picking at 3. I'm not moving, and I'm just waiting to hear from Dame. I'm trying to convince him to stay because I think that veteran leadership is important for young guys like Simons, Sharp, Brandon Miller, whatever. So
Mm-hmm. Do you think so? I never heard that before about Lillard going to the Bucks. Is
I
that even
just
a?
I'm
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
I thought you were
I'm just
actually
thinking
saying
about
you thought
teams.
about it.
No, I'm just thinking about teams that like they had issues and like might try to change things up. He's not going to the Bucks. Not going to happen. But
Okay, because I was gonna say,
is
I
the
was
first
like,
thing that comes to
what package are you thinking about? You thinking about like Drew Holiday for
mind.
Damian Lillard? I
I
was like,
don't
that's
know.
actually pretty decent. Um,
I have no
yeah.
idea. I
Okay,
don't know.
okay. I didn't know if you had like something you were working on and you just kind of said it, and I was like, oh, let's dive into
No,
this.
no, I
All
don't.
right. Well, so on your fourth pick, I'm going off your mock draft here. Um, the last time we talked, we were talking about how like you had positive content on your
Mm,
platforms and stuff, and how you really didn't talk about the Thompson twins that much because you said you don't talk about them because for one, you don't really know their game that well, or you don't have a lot of good things to say. In your mock draft, you have Amen Thompson going fourth overall to the Rockets. Do you think that Amen and his brother, the other Thompson twin, their game is going to translate to the NBA? Or do you
mm.
think that they're going to be one of those players that went like high in the lottery and they kind of just like fell out over time?
Yeah, people with the Thompson twins either think that they're excuse me, they're that they think the Thompson twins, most people are 3-4 or 3-5, or they think they're 8, 9, 10, 11, and they're not worth. I'm actually somewhere in the middle. I'll tell you this about so yes, for the positive content thing, and I have mixed feelings about them. So I'm not sure exactly what I want to publicly say on in terms of like posting and stuff yet. Um, I have more confidence in a men because he's this upside big plus playmaker. I have questions about their shooting, especially in men, and other aspects of their game. But I have enough confidence in their natural athletic ability is clear that they will be, I don't know about fine, but they should be fine in the league for a while. I'll say my biggest worries are, like I said, some in the aspects of their game, but they're also 20-year-olds playing against 16 and 17-year-olds in OTE and high school games that like the OT is not serious. It's very unserious gameplay. It's not real. Like the rules are different. The refs are just like whatever. It's this big show to them. There's half the time they're not playing defense. They're just like when they show the Thompson twins highlights on OTE platforms, it's them on a breakaway and with no one tracking back doing like a 360 layup. And I'm like obviously there's much more film to that like I look at and most of it and a lot of us look at. Um, but that's what people see, and that is the truth. Like that is what OTE wants to put out there, and I think it hurts the Thompson twins and the perception of them, and it hurts them playing like developing. I really believe that OTE is impacting guys like that in a bad way. And the age difference and the quality difference that they're playing against also not even just age is so far. Like they're playing against Isaac and Eli Ellis and Rob Dillingham and like a couple of guys, and that's about it. Alex Sarr, who is a big man. He's a 2024 draft prospect. He's leaving the OTE this year to go play in the NBL for a year because he's going to be in a much better system and organization and league that suits him for the NBA. And he knows that, and everyone knows that. But OT's like, oh, yeah, like, great. We got another guy going pro. I'm like, you should be happy about that. Like, he's going to another place to get to the NBA next year. So that's my rant about the OT, I guess. But I think Amen Thompson is very good. I think Asar Thompson is very good. I think Amen is a little better. I'm more confident in his floor than I am Asar. And his fit on certain teams at the top right there. Like the Rockets could definitely use a player like him. I think it'll be fun. But I have a lot of questions that waver my confidence in saying that they're both top 5 prospects. So
Well, you forgot the fact that also whenever they have a breakaway dunk, they bring out the smoke cannons whenever they dunk it.
you know what? I think I might move them up a spot now. They can dunk through smoke cannons. Plus.
Yeah. Well, I watched some of their highlights because I was trying to figure out, what kind of players they were because I was going to do a mock draft on my blog. And I was like, gosh, this kind of feels like the Harlem Globetrotters almost. Like, because the announcers were just saying stupid stuff and you could
Yeah.
just tell the gameplay. And then also, like, I think whenever there was like a breakaway dunk or like a 3-pointer right in someone's face, they flash lights and there's smoke cannons being going off. And I was like, I don't think this is a very serious league. I didn't actually know that OTE was like mainly high schoolers until I did a little bit of research on it, and then you just said it right now.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of high school kids that like some of them like Rob Dillingham are trying to get to college, so they don't take the paycheck at all yet.
mm,
But Alex Sarr is one of them who took the paycheck because he's international. Then he went to NBL and whatever. It varies, and that's the problem. Is that like there's no consistency in any of the guys, and a lot of them are guinea pigs right now. So they're just trying to
yeah.
figure themselves out. But I don't think the league is sustainable with how they're just currently doing it. So
So on your next one on your mock draft, you have Cam Whitmore going 5th to the Detroit Pistons. And now on my personal mock draft that I have Cam Whitmore going 4th and Anthony Black going 5th. Is that silly of me to think that?
no, I don't think so. I think the Pistons need a wing for sure. Now that the Sadiq Bey is gone, I think Cam Whitmore is probably the best athlete in the class. Maybe you could argue the Thompson twins or Scoot, whatever, but he's right up there. He's a freak. He displayed signs of things at his time at Nova. Shout out Nova. But he through some injury issues and the team not being great, like he didn't. It was a weird year for him, but he still had enough to show everything that he's capable of. Um, it's tough. I love Anthony Black. I think he can be a wing, but like a Josh Giddey-esque wing that plays the 1 and 2 also. So if you want to throw that in with Ivy and Cade, I think it's a lot of jumbo playmakers and a lot of similar skill sets that might not be perfect, but I like the sound of it because like we said, we need 2 guys, you need 3 guys to succeed in the league. I do think Cam could go 4. I do think he could go 6, 7, or 8 or 9. Depending on that, he's a guy that might be for fit with those other guys in there, like Keontae, Anthony Black, Casey Wallace, where if you don't need a point guard, like you're not taking Casey Wallace. Like if you have a starting point guard, you're like the Thunder aren't taking Casey Wallace, and some of those teams aren't taking him. So that's where you start to get for fit. But it's tough. I think it's a big mishmash of those prospects. So
I the only reason I have Cam Whitmore going so high is because I feel like now if you draft a Villanova guy, you're going to have a solid basketball player. I mean, if you just look in the NBA, you have players like Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Deontay DiVincenzo, those guys that they're not necessarily stars. Now, Jalen Brunson could be a star for the Knicks maybe one day, but you're going to get good quality basketball and that they're going to be those guys that fit in the role just how you want them. Because when Jay Wright was coaching that team, he had all these players that were really good and we didn't know it at the time, but he made them fit into their roles. And that's why they won a couple of championships with him. I
I
forget
think
the
it's the
colleges. Yeah, go ahead.
no. What you say? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say like Villanova's at college now. I was trying to think of back in the day,
Mhm.
like what colleges like if you draft out of there because you knew they were going to be good. Obviously, Kentucky has guys that are in the lottery almost every single year. A
Right.
lot of those guys don't pan out, but I feel like if you draft a Villanova guy, you're making a solid investment on a good quality basketball player.
Yeah, I'll say the one thing you kind of mentioned about Jay Wright, like when Jay Wright was there, the biggest difference is Villanova. All those guys were on winning teams, and with Jay Wright, where Kyle Neptune is trying to keep that pace going, and it took a year, and they might get back to it this year. But that's a difference. Cam Whitmore didn't play for a winning team. He didn't play for Jay Wright's system. He played for Kyle Neptune, a brand new, young, first year head coach at Villanova. And I think that's a big difference. And I could be wrong in saying that he could be a Brunson Hart. He could be amazing just because he's from Villanova. But he might not be. And then we'll see a break in the time period of like Villanova guys coming out. But I have no reason to say yes or no to that. So
Is there anybody in the lottery right now that you could see jumping up to like a top five, um, other than the people you have in there right now?
top five is tough, like because when you get to when you get to five, it could be a bunch of different guys. Um, but I look at like Cam Whitmore is a guy who maybe not consensus top five, who could be up there. Asar Thompson might be up there. I don't think he should be, but he might be. I think G. Jackson's the one to watch. I think we had spoken about him, but he's just like there were reasons to not like some maturity things and like inefficiencies, but he's gonna be the youngest player in the NBA next year. You're getting a guy who next year, if he's in the 2024 draft, where he should be, if he didn't reclass for college this year, he'd be a top three pick probably. If all things went well, he could go two or maybe even one. But you could get him in the top 10. So maybe teams start to realize the upside there. And if it's the right team, the right fit at 5, 6, or 7, like they could really jump high on Gigi. So I'm been on high on him all year because of that upside, because of that natural ability at his size, very like Paul George-esque a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think he could jump up a little bit, but he's a lottery pick for sure, in my opinion. And people still don't see that. So
So do you think the teams that are like in the bottom of the lottery, if they get GG Jackson, like they pretty much got to steal?
I definitely think so. Like I said, if you can give him the right development system and the right role and stuff right away, I think it's a big opportunity. I think I have him going to the Raptors, trying to pick at like, oh, maybe they get off of OG and or Siakam, and then they open up for Scotty and Gigi and these big guys that can do a lot. I look at like OKC's down there, the Magic are down there, the Jazz at 9 and I think 16. I think they have also, um, and the Pelicans are at 14. I know, but those are teams that I think could swing on upside that could be like, damn, like the Mavs and the Wizards and the Pacers all let this guy drop because they don't want him to fit. But like they really are missing out on a good one. I really think in like even a year, but probably like 2, 3, 4 years, we're gonna look back and be like, damn, like GG reclassing into a loaded draft class brought his stock down relative to the other prospects, but it shouldn't have because he would be a top 3 pick in 2024 and he's worth it. So
Now, getting away from the lottery part of the draft, I know you're an Atlanta Hawks fans, correct?
yeah.
Yeah. So who would
Yeah.
you love to see? And I don't even know if you've looked at the draft this far. Um, what pick do the Hawks have? And then who would you love to see them grab?
So we have 15 and 46. I think it's 46. I'm trying to get it's 15 and 46. I think we'll say. I know 15. I think 15 is a waiting game where, like, if GG Jackson's on the board, I'm all for it because I don't think John Collins is going to be a Hawk forever. He's been trade rumors for literally his whole career. Jalen Johnson, I don't think is going to be this prolific forward either. And I think swinging for upside because I think we're trending towards either going all in and like really, really committing and trading everyone for another star, or completely just being like, oh no, like, and we're screwed. So I wouldn't hate that. But I look at guys like the combo guards and scoring guards like Jordan Hawkins from UConn, Nick Smith if he's still on the board, a combo from Arkansas, Keontae George if he's on the board, I would go crazy for. I think it would really help take the load off in the backcourt depth. And I don't think Bogey Bogdanovich is going to be here for a while. I don't think our guard depth is great, especially in terms of playmakers outside of Trey and DeJounte. So I think that could help right away and long term. Like Keontae or Nick Smith is ideal, or Jordan Hawkins, to be honest. And then in the second round, like I think it just depends on who starts falling. But if we went for a guard there, which is more likely in the first, I look at guys like Jalen Slauson, who I love out of Furman. He's going to be he's the first Furman player he'll be ever drafted if he gets drafted, and the first one ever at the
Wow.
combine. I think like even going for some guards like Isaiah Wong or Andre Jackson, if you don't take a guard in the first round, is a really good idea. Just to offer some instant impact because the team like does have this strive to win. And then there's a couple guys like Seth Lundy, who's a 3-and-D wing from Penn State, and Tosin Woolman. That's a name, but he's a utility wing from Princeton. He does a lot. I think he could help impact right away too.
So just to talk about this very quickly, I know John Collins has been in the trade rumors for his whole career because I can remember a
Yeah.
couple years ago they were thinking about trading him. Do you think it would be a good move for the Hawks to trade him? And if they did trade him, like who would you even trade him to?
Yeah, that's tough. I think the only three spots where I would consider trading Collins is either if they're just like, you know what, we can't do it anymore. We need to get picks and whatever we can, a young player. I understand it. But realistically, if Zion becomes available, if Cat becomes available, or if Siakam's available, I can't think of any other guys that are realistically even having a chance of being available. I don't think Zion is going to be available. I don't think Cat's going to be available either. But I don't think it hurts to, hey, call the Pelicans, say, we got John Collins, Clint Capella, two firsts, and whatever to get Zion. And then if they say we need this and that, then you know that you're in business. Same thing with Cat. I think Siakam will take less because I think Collins is actually a guy who might fit well in Toronto, like Collins and a pick for Siakam. Maybe you have to throw in someone else or a swap or something like that. Like, I don't hate doing that either because going all in is going to take moving John Collins. If we have two star guards, it's going to take bringing someone in the front court. And maybe Collins stays if we do trade for Cat. Maybe it's a Capella trade, but they have Gobert, so it would have to be Collins, I think, in that sense. That's why I kind of said that. So
Well, tell me if this sounds so stupid and if I should just end my podcast right now after I ask you this. But I thought about this the other day because of what was going on in the playoffs. So I don't want to spoil what I'm going to say. So let me just say this. If the Hawks packaged John Collins,
nervous.
the 15th pick, be a couple of futures, and like someone else in on the Hawks to fill the cap space, do you feel like the Hawks, if Joel Embiid said, I don't want to be here anymore at Philadelphia because I'm tired of losing, I want to go trade some,
Yeah.
I want to be traded somewhere else. Would you be into that if you were a Hawks fan for like a trade Joel Embiid combo? And would that even be possible? Some of the assets you guys have.
How can I not be into it? Like, it's a reigning MVP. Um, I don't think he's going to be ready to leave. I think he is adamant on staying in Philly, being the Philly guy. He loves that place. He loves the process idea, and getting everyone else off there his team if he needs to, rather than going to a new team. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's like realistic that he's going to leave. But if he did, I think we have a great package to offer because we have two good front court players, good enough to start the package with at the least. And we still have, even though we traded 3 firsts for DeJounte, we still have extra picks. We still have a lot of draft picks to utilize. We have a lot of young players. So um, I don't think it's going to happen. And no, you should not end your podcast.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you were going to tell me like some of those guys. That is literally the worst trade idea I've ever heard in my
No,
entire life.
it would take like Collins, Capella, 4 firsts, Jalen Johnson, and like the four swap. I would take a ridiculous package that,
Oh yeah. Well, I
yeah,
mean,
it's
if
gonna be wild.
Rudy Gobert got like,
Yeah,
gosh, it was like 5 first round unprotected
it was
picks.
so dumb. Yeah,
Yeah, I just think Danny Ainge kind of finessed
yeah, he did.
the Timberwolves a little bit on that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I just thought about that because the way Joel Embiid was talking, it was just like it felt like to me he was tired of going through this process, trust the process, and that
yeah,
maybe he was just pissed because they lost, and maybe he just said some stuff that he didn't really mean. Um,
right.
there have been rumors going around that the Knicks are kind of looming over the 76ers, that he is maybe requesting a trade to go there. But you never know. I mean, with the way the NBA is nowadays, that's why I always say no player is ever untradeable unless you're like constantly winning. Because a
Right.
player, unless they have a no trade clause, and there's even ways to get around that, can always request a trade in today's NBA. We're not in that time in the NBA where you get drafted by them, you get a rookie extension, you get another contract with them, and you stay there your whole career like Damian Lillard has, which is kind of like unheard of. So I
Right.
always like to say that everyone is on the table unless you're like a Giannis and you're winning constantly, or a Steph Curry. You're constantly, going to the finals, and you're a great player.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I I'm an Indiana guy, and I want to know what you think about one of the Indiana guys in the draft, Jalen Hood Schifino.
Hmm.
Where do you think he'll get selected at, and will he become a good NBA player?
Um, Inconsistency is a big worry for me for him. Like a lot of people compare him to Lonzo Ball. I don't see it as much defensively sound and playmaking. There's a lot of flashes. I don't see I don't see him being a point guard. Lonzo has developed into a point guard rather than a combo. I see him being a combo, maybe leading a two in the long term. Um, I look at other guys around him, the combo guards, Keontae George, Nick Smith, Colby Jones, and for reasons on their own, I prefer those guys right now. I think he's in that range though, where if the Pelicans took him in the late lottery or the Raptors, whatever, wouldn't be surprised. I think that's probably the earliest we look at him. And the latest you probably look at him is likely into that mid first of like Lakers, Heat, Warriors, Rockets, whatever it is. The Nets have two picks. Towards the like 25 is probably the end of where I'd say he'd go. I have less confidence in him than most people do, but I see the ability and upside. So I understand if the Jazz or the Nets or the Rockets want to take a swing on him. So
Well, that's one thing that I always talk about with my grandpa, who's a big Indiana guy, that Jalen Hood-Schifino showed flashes of he could be at one of the a great scorer for Indiana. You know, he had like 30 something points against Purdue at Purdue, but then the next game, it was like he might as well not even be on the floor because he just wasn't there. And I feel like to become a good NBA player, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have consistency and you have to be able to fit in the role that you're given. And with Jalen Hood-Schifino, him kind of being in the spotlight at Indiana, I don't know if that's going to transfer over well to the NBA
right.
where he may be coming off the bench, not getting a lot of starter minutes, unless he goes to a team that is just in full rebuild mode and he gets to play a lot of like, I guess stat padding minutes.
Yeah, even if those teams like the Rockets or whatever it's going to be, like they have guards. The Nets have players that he's going to have to take a back seat to at times. Um, I do question that. And we talked like with a Christian Brown last year where I was so high on him because I was like, he's going to do exactly what he's doing at KU for whatever team drafts him. It's likely a playoff team in the end of the first round, and he's going to do it at a very high level. Where a lot of stars, Jalen Hood-Schifino is a great example where a lot of stars, once you get out of the top part of the draft, they're going to be going to better teams for the most part. They're going to be going to the Grizzlies, the Kings. I know the Pacers do have two late picks, the Jazz have picks, but they're going to be going to teams that likely don't have the ability to give them anything but a role, a small role at the beginning. So the transition might be really tough for a guy like him. So I definitely do worry about that a little bit. Compared like Jet Howard's in a similar range. He's 3-and-D. He's a very good shooter. You can slot him into any NBA roster probably on day one and he'll be good. So it's easier to take him and start him and play him right away. So the transition might be a little tough for him.
So let me give you a scenario, Ryan. Well, first, before I give you that scenario, let me ask you this question. Chet Holmgren didn't get a chance to play any this season due to his injury.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to affect how people perceive him since he's playing his rookie year with Wemby, Henderson, the Thompson twins, Brandon Miller, all those guys?
If he doesn't do great and Wemby is amazing and Cam Whitmore and you have like six guys that are like completely outplaying him in this draft class, it'll be a concern for people. I also think it'll help him hide some things, I guess. Like this is his rookie year. It's his first year in the NBA, so he's going to struggle at times, but he has been developing, working on his frame and adding to it and stuff. I worry because people hate him for no reason. It's the same. It's ridiculous. Like people are against him because of the body build and because he's so thin and frail and his style and stuff like that. I think he's gonna be fine, but because the draft class is so loaded and Victor and Scoot, I think it'll actually help Chet not have to be the best player ever right away because like, oh, you know what? Like it's even better than Victor. Like if Victor is going to be so good, like that's okay. You don't have to be as good as him. So the standard is not really comparable. So it's hard to gauge what's good and what's not for Chet, I think. We can look back and say Paolo and Jabari and Jaden Ivey and Keegan did the X, Y, and Z. But it's tough because it's a different year and like maybe it'll be interesting. But it definitely doesn't help a ton. But I do think there's a chance for him to do his thing without being so much in the spotlight, which I think is a good thing. So,
Well, and it kind of made me feel bad for Jabari Smith because I feel like he got shit on a lot during the season because his team was so bad and everyone was like, well, he's not what he was supposed to be. Because, at that draft, it was the Paulo, Chet, and Jabari Smith draft. Well, then, Paulo obviously won Rookie of the Year, did his thing. Then Jalen Williams came out of nowhere from
Yeah.
OKC. Walker Kessler, he became like the new and improved Rudy Gobert
Yeah.
for the Jazz. So it was kind of like the it was kind of good that Chet wasn't on there because I feel like if he had a bad rookie season, people would think different about him, just like we talk about with if Wemby has a bad year. With Wemby, Henderson, Brandon Miller, all those guys, I don't think anybody has any expectations for him because this is Wemby's rookie year. So all eyes are going to be focused on Wemby and not on Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren could maybe average 15, 9, and 5, and no one
Yeah.
would probably say anything because
Exactly.
Wemby, he's averaging 18 and 10, and the Spurs are on a 5-game winning streak, and they just beat the defending
Yeah.
champions, the Denver Nuggets. So
Yeah.
you just never know how stuff's going to pan out. The last thing is, so it's mid-April. The season just concluded
Yeah.
of the 2023-24 season.
Okay.
Who are the top 3 rookies in the running for Rookie of the Year?
Victor's like, it's. I'm gonna start there. He'll be. I just like. Wow. What am I supposed to say? Like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Victor. Victor.
Yeah.
Um. If Scoot, either team he goes to, I think there's no way he isn't great. I'll go Victor and Scoot. I'll be boring, but then I don't think. I think it could be a guy like I'm thinking random dudes. I don't think it's gonna be this like Chris Murray or like Marcus Sasser. Like they just get taken like really late in the
Mm.
first. They're like impact first right away guys. Brandon Podziemski out of Santa Clara could be a guy like Jalen Williams who also came
Yeah.
from Santa Clara last year. I'll go Keontae George because I think the team that takes him is sees the talent and is like, man, this kid is special. We want to give him an open floor to do what not whatever, but like for the most part, like let him be free. So his efficiency splits might not be. I think he might have a Jaden Ivey esque season, where depending on injuries, obviously and role and stuff, but he might start right away. He might be in the 6 man, 7 man, but he's going to score. He's going to have a good assist totals. He's going to do a little bit of everything, but you're going to see a lot of flashes that are super impressive. So I'll go with Keontae. Although guys like Casey Wallace, Grady Dick, that I know have such a high floor, and Jarris Walker are going to be really good right away. Could also be up there, but I'll go with Keontae.
Nice. Well, I didn't know if you were just going to say Wemby, Henderson, and Miller right off the bat. Um,
Yeah, it probably will be. Let's be honest, like, but you never know.
oh
No,
yeah, I mean,
it's very often not the top three. Like, it's always someone different that's like in the race. That's in the top 4 or 5 or 3 or 2. So that's why I went away from Miller, although he's gonna be like I think he's a similar guy to Jabari Smith, similar upside, size, and the shooting ability is what's gonna unleash his ceiling and his floor, honestly too. Jabari shot the ball inefficiently to start his year and sporadically throughout the year, and that's what brought his stock down a little bit. Because if he's not shooting the ball well, his impact is very, very diminished. It's not to nothing. He's still a good player on defensively. He still does other things. But that's his big upside on offense. And he's not like the best shot creator. So being able to shoot the rock well out from outside at his size, like Brandon Miller, is the same thing. So I worry any inconsistent play from Brandon Miller, people are going to be all over him. So
well, it's and like you said, Jabari Smith. I think in the very beginning of the year, the odds for the Rookie of the Year was 1, 2, 3, and then once the season got on, Jabari Smith kind of slowly faded out of that because the
yeah,
Rockets didn't get national attention. He was very inconsistent, and then the OKC were kind of like this fun young team that were doing things differently. Like they have all these draft picks, and Shea was having an MVP type season. All of a sudden, Jalen Williams comes out of the woodwork. It's like, oh, actually, he should probably be one of the Rookie of the Year candidates. Um, do you not think that Chet Holmgren would even kind of sniff the top 3 at all next season?
to be honest, I didn't even like think about Chet because like I didn't think about it because I'm like, Ben Simmons should still be winning Rookie of the Year. Jason Tatum,
Yeah,
Jason
yeah.
Tatum's still 19. That's crazy. Like, that's wild. Um, I did it didn't even. I'm thinking about just this class because I'm so invested right now. I think into like the prospect, the scouting, the combine, etc. 100% could be Chet, and realistically, the odds will probably be Victor Scoop, Brandon Miller, and like Chet involved there. People will be like, oh yeah, interesting. It should be Victor Scoot and Chet at the top, and then a huge drop off.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think that year to sit back, develop, and work on everything and be in the system in the organization does help Chet prepare to be good on day one. Like Victor is his own person, but compared to Brandon Miller, maybe Chet, like Brandon Miller's going to go into an organization. Like we said, he's a pretty volatile player and could be polarizing, like Jabari Smith is and has been. So we could see some ups and downs. Where Chet on day one is going to be good with a floor. I don't know what that floor is. I don't know if that floor is, like you said, 15 and 10, or I don't know if that floor is 12 and 6, or whatever it is. But he's going to be good right away, and he has a starting role pretty much on day one. So.
Awesome. Ryan, thanks again for so much for coming on. I truly appreciate you coming on and getting us your wisdom, all things NBA and college basketball.
I appreciate you having me on as always. And a couple years later, I'm just kidding. A few weeks later, we'll do it again, obviously. But I look forward to it.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great one.